law enforcement, myself, Ollie, and Glinda, and we made law enforcement an offer to help bring Hailey home. We made him an offer on the record with the DA in the DA's office to help find Hailey and to bring him home. Law enforcement agreed at the meeting to help bring her home and said they could follow through with it. And then this morning reneged on the offer. They said they no longer could
fulfill their end of the
fulfill their part of their agreement, and gave no reason why. They agreed that they're not communicating with local law enforcement, that Colorado City PD and the Texas Rangers and the sheriff, they're not all communicating. We found evidence that we found in February when we were doing our search that they never went and looked at. Bones that we found, we showed them to the sheriffs, and they said, well, we'll get right on it. There's seriously a lack of communication between Colorado City PD and the Sheriff's Department and the Texas Rangers, all of it. Now, I don't know in what case that law enforcement wouldn't take an offer on to bring this little girl home.
It was their offer that we agreed to.
Yep.
And then they went back
on
it today.
With no reason at all. It's all recorded in the DA's office, and you know what? This little girl needs to be brought home. She needs justice. We need to find her. And it doesn't seem like they want to bring this little girl home, in my opinion. You know?
What about the fact that they haven't spoke with sex offenders too, and they say they've cleared them all, but really have never spoken to any of them thoroughly? Never even walked into any of the sex offenders' houses.
They said they've thoroughly gone through some of the GPS tracking. Well, in my daughter's case, it took a task force of 20, and it took them 8 months, and they said they've thoroughly gone through some of the sex offenders' GPS tracking device. Well, it's clear they have not. Law enforcement is not doing whatever they can do to find this little girl. They are blowing, they want to fight against each other. Who's going to bring this little girl home? It's about bringing Hailey home. It's about finding justice for this little girl, finding out who did this to her, whoever it might be. But the bottom line is, we're all here fighting for Hailey. We're all looking for Hailey, and law enforcement can't get it together. They can't talk to the parents. They can't. They make us an offer. You help us out. Not an offer I offered or anyone else, but they made us an offer. Can you help us with Hailey's case so we can make it? We can bring her home. Absolutely. We'll do whatever it takes. Here's the offer. Will you take it? Absolutely, I'll take it. And then this morning, the Texas Ranger says, I'm sorry, we can't help you. It's not about me. It's not about Billy. It's not about any of us. It's about Hailey. And you know what? It's very sad that in Texas, they can't get it together, that they can't put their man egos aside and make it about a little girl that we all love and we're all here celebrating. It's not a celebration. It's sad. Hailey should be here on her 14th birthday. And it needs to stop. And unless all of us start putting pressure on law enforcement, that little girl's never going to be found, if she's dead or if she's alive. But unless law enforcement start putting their forces together and they communicate with each other, it's not going to happen. These two ladies were in the meeting with me, along with a few others. The whole meeting was recorded with the district attorney. Ask him. You know what? If you guys want to find Hailey, ask him. What does it take to find Hailey Dunn? Because it's obvious that they don't care enough to even be present at this balloon release. A lot of times the perpetrator comes back and joins forces and looks at what's going on. Do you see any law enforcement here? No. How much do they really care about this little girl, or is it about their egos? It needs to stop, We're all here to say that they made an offer that they brought to the table, and law enforcement chose to ignore it, and it's wrong. Any questions?
Question right here. Where are the bones found?
I'm not telling you where they're found.
No, we turned it over to law enforcement. They said they would go look at it 6 months later.
I will tell you that it took 6 months.
Yeah.
I will tell you that we walked in there with a stack of papers this big. Anybody that has searched any item you found has not been picked up.
Question right here. Is it our law enforcement? Is it
the items I know for a fact that I witnessed, that I saw, that were turned in on February 2nd, I went back Thursday in Mitchell County and they were still remaining there.
So it's Mitchell County.
And Howard County and Scurry County.
It's all the counties.
So we spend all day, all night searching, driving from all over to search. and our items that we found, that we tagged, that we turned in, weren't picked up.
None of them?
I have a lot that weren't.
We can't say none of them have been picked out. Some of them might have been.
But everyone should have.
What I turned in was picked up 4 months later because I turned it in a second time.
And threatened with a press release. We turned it in, 4 months later turned it in again, and said, if it's not picked up in a week, we're going to do a press release.
Turned it in.
And it was finally picked up, except they missed one part. They didn't find one of the items there.
And Courtney was asked if she gets tips sent to hopeforhailey.org. Police department told her not to send those tips to them because they have to waste their time checking out every one of those tips.
There's also a lady here in Colorado City that sent in a tip that a man in a white van was tried to get her and her daughter to come up to their van to look at a dog, and later lets her dog out, and still nothing was done up until, well, still nothing's been done. That was 3 weeks ago. Man driving around trying to get a child into his van, and nothing's been done in Colorado City.
Billy, is law enforcement in touch with you on a regular basis?
No, they're not. I haven't spoke with law enforcement in months.
And how can an investigation be done without speaking to the parents? And I don't care if Billy is a suspect or Clint's a suspect, law enforcement needs to communicate with the parents. How are they supposed to know? I mean, half of the...
And if the only place they're looking is in my backyard and they can't find my child, they need to really get off of their asses and go look for my baby.
Maybe I'll go to the news. I know there's a new chief in town. It's been about 2 months.
I've never
Have you talked to him?
No, I have not spoken to him. But they did admit yesterday in our meeting that they were not in contact, in communication with local law enforcement, that there was a breakdown in communication between law enforcement and the DA and the sheriff.
With DA had told me a long time ago that they don't talk to Pete Demper, they don't let him know anything, and he's the city manager.
Yeah.
And this was at the beginning.
So we're going 8 months with no communication with the parents, with no communication on how many sex offenders the parents know, which, by the way, they thought it was 2 sex offenders that the father knew, and it was actually 6 sex offenders that the father knew. I mean, what kind of investigation is thorough? Okay, well, they blame it because Billy has a lawyer and Sean has a lawyer. Well, Clint does not have a lawyer. Why aren't you asking those questions? Why aren't you asking, how many sex offenders do you know? What kind of information do you know? They don't talk to them. Well, why not? Because the parents don't want to deal with local law enforcement, because they tell them things that they don't want to hear. They cross the line of ethics by telling the parents that Hailey's dead, we know that you did this, we know this. You don't say that to parents of a missing child. My child was missing and I would have killed an investigator for telling me that my child was dead. You don't tell that to a parent of a missing child. You don't try to get a reaction out of a parent by saying your child is dead. That, you know what? They still have a code of ethics that they have to follow, and they're not following the code of ethics.
Do y'all have a next step that y'all want to take?
Well, I'm flying out of here so I don't get arrested.
I would like to see
Hailey brought home.
I want to see Hailey home, but we need somebody else in charge. We need a new investigator, somebody with an open mind, with that's going to listen, and that's going to work and try.
How do you do that? Where do you go from now to get help? I mean, where do you go from now?
I really only depend on Holly and
Terry.
all the teams that have come in to help. Holly and the searchers that go out with her, they're going to be the ones to find my daughter. They're the ones looking everywhere else.
Yeah.
When is the next search?
Whenever we get together and decide we can all come.
Can you identify who you talked to yesterday?
We talked with Billy Sides, the DA investigator. We talked to Sheriff Patrick Timms, the sheriff, and we also talked to the other DA investigator, and Ann Reed, and
Sides.
There was Gil.
And there was a CPS worker in there, and also an advocate in the advocacy center.